Hello, this is the part where I test to make sure it's actually streaming. I see the audio going, I see my picture, I see the freaky recursion. So I go over to another screen and I come to see if there's actually people there. 4 concurrent viewers while I'm just starting out. This is like some kind of record. So I have my text chat thing right here. Hey, great, Miles is there. Miles is the one who this is for. So I've been YouTubing for many years and I've been live streaming for far fewer years than that. Good, I'm glad you can see me, Miles. And people like Miles and a few others out there are like people who are presences who, I see on and off, and, I sometimes drop off for long periods at a time and I lose these folks because I'm not consistent. So I'm going to try and get more consistent and be more responsive to the questions of the people who this does really seem to reach. And this is one of those times, and there's some interesting stuff going on. I generally blank all my screens. I keep about 7 of them going. I love the virtual screens. And my first virtual screen is where really I do my work. These things are generally arranged in the order I have screens going. This is related to the work I'll show you, but it's not really one of the screens. So I just bring up my command line interface, which is, full screen Linux, basically. Not really full screen, because I like seeing the taskbar here. Oh, and by the way, this is all going to apply to the Mac. I have my new Mac from work. It's great. It's M2 hardware, real Apple hardware. I've done my research. It's just I've got to take my deep breath and do the dive. It'll probably be a late into the night session where I take everything I've learned and just apply it and make the script. And what script is it, you might ask? Well, it has a lot to do with what you're looking at here. This is a Linux screen. I am in a Python virtual environment under Linux. I go directly into that. And I give a message here about what this is all really about for me. This could be about different things for other people, but for me, I run under the screen program, a very important program, Jupyter. Jupyter hosts Jupyter Notebook for me, which again, if you look at my multi-screen setup and you look at how I arrange my icons, you'll notice that Jupyter Lab is so important for me that it comes even before the web browser. So let me go ahead and just load full screen Jupyter. You know what? I'm going to quit out of full screen Jupyter for a second. It's not really full screen. I'm saying that out of habit. I'm going to close out of this Linux terminal here because this is an important piece of my work. I invited someone in who might be interested in this. I was struggling with this. It's a claim that's been made about a feature that's important to me. I don't know if it's going to be an issue on the Mac or not, but certainly on Windows, there's a tendency to shut down Linux in the background once your last Linux shell is closed. It's a developer tool. There's no reason things need to be running in the background unless you're me and you want it to be powering Jupyter. So I go over to screen 2 again, and now, after 8 seconds has gone by, mind you, it's the 8-second rule, I go into Jupyter Lab one more time, and now the impressive thing I'm demonstrating here is that it opens. This is Jupyter Lab back-ended by Linux, right? This is running in a Linux screen session invisibly. So anyone else running Jupyter is quite familiar with the little black boxes that get left open by either Anaconda or the mystery Windows services that get run in the background by the desktop Jupyter version from GitHub. So this is a variation on that. It's really just the same thing, but instead of having those mysterious black boxes, it's just very formally underneath the GNU screen program. So once again, screen ls to list them, and there's the Jupyter one, and you can actually look at it. You can go screen reattach to Jupyter, and this is it. This is just the interface. So if I went refreshing or executing code, you would see the little server messages here. I can make the font smaller so it doesn't line wrap as much. It's nice. And people who do this always suffer this, kind of insulting server box that gets left open, or the desktop Jupyter version, they have to suffer uninstalling these mystery components, 2 things before they can reinstall to update, and it creates a very poor Jupyter upgrade story. So in addition to this being a much better version of Jupyter Notebook, because it's Python back-ended and your paths are normal, it also has a better upgrade story. So you can get out of screen session with these kooky keyboard commands. These are my challenges now. If I'm trying to mainstream this stuff, I got to teach people, if they go into this, they have to do Control-AD to detach from the screen. There's also tmux. I know if tmux people are watching, yeah. But screen ships standard. It's part of the system, so I am a screen person. There's also ping. So if Craig's on the line, my solution to keep systemd alive is to do almost the exact same trick as Jupyter, but with a ping program. I can show that, screen, reattach. And I know you're here for the AI, Miles, so we'll get to that soon. But this is just the ping program. I'm going to make it more efficient. Right now I have it set to about every 5 seconds, and I have it at 64 bytes. I can make it more efficient, but for now that's how I'm keeping it alive. But none of it really even needs to be open. And I'm going to actually go ahead and close it for the next step. So I'll get to what you're interested in, Miles, because this is not dependent upon AI, but AI is definitely a very value-added feature to the latest work. And let's show you the end result first. So, this is screen 1. This is the Linux terminal. I will open it again just to have it open. And then I'll go to screen 2 to where there's Jupyter, and screen 3, it's often about the web stuff, right? So I'll bring up a new tab, and I'll go to my website, mikelev.in. My name is my website. Easy to remember. And it's essentially a blogging system. A lot of this stuff is just built with a static site generator. I edit markdown files. So this file here, just to give you sort of the the forest and trees look, this whole file here is just a markdown file. It looks like a normal text file to me over here. So I could go into my blog repo, and then I can vim my index. I mean, it's as easy as you can imagine. It's my index.md file in my blog repo for what I just showed you. How much straightforward could that be? And, here it is. This is that same content, which just looks, like a published website over here. But when you scroll down, you'll find 10 articles, my 10 most recent posts. And if you drill down on one of these posts, you'll see it's a formatted blog post, nice formatted blog post. I don't have a lot of graphics in this one, but you'll see also these previous next arrows strung together. So if you wanted to go to the previous, you go there, you can go down, you can read it, blah, 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 blah. And you can keep following it previous. And so that's about all to show you there. And on the home page, I have some category stuff going on at the bottom. It's not fully developed, but I do have categories being sort of built out of the keyword extraction that AI is doing. Okay, so you get the idea that there is a straightforward, plain vanilla, having nothing to do with my work, static site generator system here. I'm using Jekyll. There's also Hyde, and there's Hugo, and Penguin or something. Pelican is another one. And it has this system where these upper lines are structured data. What you're looking at here is key value pairs: author, me, description, something, title, something, group. And you can just hand code this stuff, and I do for miscellaneous pages throughout my site. But for the blog system, it's nuts to have all these separate individual files, right? They all look like this. They all look identical. So I do something a little bit different. I put them all into one file. So there's your structured data, and there's your markdown beneath it. I'll try and keep the chat thing up front now. I'll push that over here. I'll make my font a little bit smaller, not bigger. And so now you can interactively ask questions, I believe. I am going to quit out of this. The software I'm using is NeoVim. It's the exact same thing as Vim for all intents and purposes, but It's the version you have to use if you want your old buddy Copilot from GitHub, from Microsoft, to be kind of typing along with you. So that's the first thing I'll show before I actually show you the bigger system. I hate calling it a system because it's a non-system system. It's just text files, and then it's just like the static site generator, a program you run on your text file that pre-processes for the static site generator. And that pre-processing is where the AI stuff is layered in. But there's two kinds of AI stuff being layered in that I want to make sure they stay separate in your mind. The first one is just Copilot because it's available for NeoVim. So if I just do vimfoo.txt or MD markdown, and I start typing in here, you will see that I can I have Copilot along with me, and I can say, even though this is markdown, I'd like to show the nice people some Python. And then I'll do my hello world of, well, you see it's already doing it, right? There's Copilot kicking in. It knows what I want to do. I named the file foo.md, so it's making a function called foo and returning bar. It already has my sense of humor. Copilot is a smart piece of software. People will put it down as just autocomplete. It's much more. So let me make the font a little bit bigger, and then show you one of the most overlooked things for NeoVim people that a VS Code person will put it down. They'll be like, well, you can't get your alternatives. Sure you can. It's just holding the Alt key and the Tab key. Oh, nope, that's for the window. Let me see if I got function tab. See, I don't do it often enough. It's not in my fingers, but you can get alternate suggestions here. Let me think it through. Control tab? Nope, control tab is something else because they have to find the space where it's not already tied up by something else. Shift tab is something else entirely still. Well, anyway, I won't get hung up on that. You can get the alternative suggestions, but I don't frequently do that. I oftentimes just change my comment. So I'm going to say, let's show them recursion. And so I'm not even in a .py file, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So, Copilot just gets what you mean. If you like what it's telling you, you hit tab and there it is. Now, if you were doing this in VS Code, you could just immediately run the code. I am a Jupyter person, so Copilot does not live in Jupyter yet. So that's kind of a blank space. And I'm always testing VS Code to see if I really want to switch over there. But so far in my mind, not being able to run the code in that Jupyter way under NeoVim is not worth giving up NeoVim for VS Code. I'm keeping an open mind, and I'm actually, every once in a while, going over to the dark side and seeing if life is better over there. But the general API for NeoVim is one that dates back 50 years, and it's never going away, and everyone tries to be it. It's worth staying on. So there's the first way AI is used, and it's everything everyone talks about. I'm showing you a programming example here, but you can just say, tell me a joke. Yeah. About Python and a penguin. Let's see if it does it. I don't know. It'll probably make a fool of me, but yeah, sometimes it doesn't really know. It's like a human. It's like, what is it going to do? Is it really? Sometimes and if you want that kind of stuff, you can always go over to ChatGPT. Standard install of the Copilot plugin. I do not have any plugins running at all. This is without plugins. This is a standard install of NeoVim, having run something that the Copilot people give you. Now, I do use Vim -plug, but it's not active right now because I have my systems in a high state of flux. In fact, if I quit out of this, you'll see I am amazingly on Python 3.8 as my main thing, and you know they're up to 3.11 something, and I'm always on the latest. But I reverted myself to 3.8 because of some work I'm doing where there's those requirements, and you're like, hey, well, why not just make another Python env? Well, this is already a whole containerized environment, so when I do these things, I just run my my drink me script again. I do this, which grabs another install script, the latest install script. Drink me gets an install script, and then I would change the name of that to whatever Python version. 3.8 gets me 3.8, 3.11 gets me 3.11, but also install.bat gets me 3.11. So if I were to run this, I'm not going to go ahead. I've got a few prompts that I can do. This is how I set up my virtual environment, right? It tells you about it, then it tells you a little bit more about it. And then if I were to say yes to this one, Alice would start falling down the rabbit hole, and it would upgrade me from 3.8 to 3.11 and keep everything intact. It keeps my repos intact. It keeps my configuration files intact. It keeps my Jupyter keyboard shortcuts intact, everything. But I'm just going to X out of that because that'll take too long for this video. Okay, so I'm finally going to get to the other. Oh, well, to finish that answer there. No, the finishing that answer has to do with getting to the other place where AI is used, because I have a script I call all. What all does is it loads all my, so it shows you a little about the system now. I have it very much prepared for the public. It's right on the edge of something more than a very soft launch. I might actually start talking about it and promoting it, but it pulls from all my different repositories, including the file that's running this very thing here, so it becomes very alive. You can change what files you're running at the same time. But to answer your question more directly, one of the files it's loading is my equivalent of my vimrc, which under NeoVim, I believe they call it init.vim. So I'm just going to step through my different files. There's my init.vim, and here's my plugin. So I'm actually calling the activation of the plugin. I have one plugin here that I'm using, ven.nvim, but because I don't have the installation of the plugin system itself as part of the install script, it's not activated whenever I rerun install.bat. So I'm going to fix that. It'll be fixed on the Mac as well. It's just one of those details I'm working out, because when you're trying to have your system exactly the same after you rebuild a whole Linux system from scratch, well, it's not really from scratch. That's something else. But when you rebuild it using Microsoft's tools for pulling down the Debian or the Ubuntu image again, and you reapply all the software, you have to reapply all the software. If you miss one little thing, like activating your plugins, you can end up with something like this that doesn't really activate it. So if I were to try and use that particular plugin, that would be drawing a box around something and then typing vbox, and it would actually draw a box around it, but it's not going to work. So we'll get to that. So again, this is the forest trees sort of tour. I have some keyboard bindings, which I can scroll down my init.vim and show you. I put my keyboard bindings way at the bottom. So I do little tricks like control space. Control space is a very important one for me because it's like moving forward through my Vim buffers, right? So I just go control space, and if you ever saw Toy Story 2, I got to get rid of the highlighting, I guess, for that, or be out of insert mode. If you ever saw Toy Story 2, when the pig is flipping through the channels and they pass the channel they want, and he goes, I got to go around again. That's the way I use my Vim buffers. There's not a lot of them, so going around again is not really the biggest deal in the world. And so these are the files I edit on a day-to-day basis. All right. This is the one that is my blog, and if I just scroll down to give you an idea of what's here, you will probably recognize something that is not terribly dissimilar to the Jekyll system. if these were standalone files, this is your Jekyll header matter, head matter, front matter, front matter. So this is structured data, date colon something, title colon something, headline colon something, description colon something. And if I were to go down, a great trick is just searching for, you do your search and then you just put some hyphens in. It doesn't matter how many, because I use 80 of them. I don't have that. Oh, okay. Well, it's going to step through the 80 there. So if you really want to, you can grab your 80 hyphens. I had a problem because it was a smaller number of hyphens. But if we grab our 80 hyphens and then we search on those 80 hyphens, whatever. Anyway, I'm just going to do Control F to go forward through it. You can step through, all your different text files, and there's a lot of them in here. They're all public. I've got another text file that does the same thing for private. But everything in here is intended to eventually be published. And everything that has the header matter, the front matter filled in, gets published. And there's a lot more there than it would look at first. And I use one of my keyboard bindings, Control F5, to turn on and off line wrapping. Is it doing it? Sometimes the screencast software interferes with it. So set wrap. There it is. So you can see that there's just more there because it's scrolling off to the right. And that's the description. So this answers your question. It takes a while to get to it, but I got to lay the groundwork. If I just went and showed you this, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. I only write my date. I don't even write the date. The date gets filled in by a macro when I create a new script, a new blog post, which I'll show you in a second. And then I add title colon whatever, right? Evolution toward us to meet our overlords before they meet us. All right, I kind of like that one. It's as many double entendres that kind of evokes Alice in Wonderland as I could get in. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn off wrapping because wrapping makes it look ugly. And I'm going to go back to the top. By the way, no matter how long this file gets, because the idea is one text file for life. All right. Because NeoVim and Vim are memory efficient, you could start typing into a text file for the rest of your life, AI assisted, and it would never get long enough that it couldn't just easily handle. And then you can spell check your whole blog at once and fix mistakes like this. You can change matters of style globally. There's all kinds of advantages. In transforms, you could just transform this into another file one-to-one and make little detailed things, or search and replace right in location. So there's all kinds of data transform tricks. And when you lose your color, I have this Control S thing that gets my color syntax back, because that's one of the downsides of a big one file for life. It will get confused on color syntax. But you'll see here I've got this this top file here, which is the one I'm working on now. And I will tell you about that shortly. But first I'm going to use my macro @J, and that creates a new blog post. It sets things up. There's no harm in having this and another one that isn't published yet. Let's see what users have to say. Which one of your scripts can serve as a step-by-step to install a similar system as mine? Yeah, well, you're on a Mac, I believe. The best thing to look at, I guess, is the PC equivalent that is published. The Mac version isn't out there yet, but it all starts with install.bat, and then it hands control over to install _WSL.bat. So I'll show you that. So if you want to poke around at what controls all this, the Git project to look at, because it's in Git, I guess that's the best place to look first. It's git.com, github.com/MickLevin, like my name, but with the E taken out of Mike, /drinkme. And so on a Windows machine, this starts the process, and then it hands the process over to let's see, they should be near each. They're both installed. Install.bat starts the process, and then install.wsl continues the process. Well, it's not WSL. It's actually install underscore WSL.sh. You notice the .sh? That's a Mac version. That will be perfectly reasonable to try and adapt if you wanted to, get ahead of me. I actually encourage that, but I'm going to set this. I'm going to do it for you. It's going to be in the same Drink Me repo. And whereas install.bat hands control to install hands control to this, install.sh, right? Because that's going to work on a Mac as the initial script to kick off the process. That's going to hand control to an install underscore Mac or something. And it's going to be an exactly parallel process. One file for the proprietary desktop operating system, and then another file for the identical Ubuntu 20.04 with a user account named Ubuntu script. So this file. Second stage install. And most stuff here should just work on a Mac, I would imagine. You can just go ahead and do it. Although there are file transfers. There's some tricks I do here that move stuff into location from anywhere where you see /MNT. Oh, no /MNTs in here. That's good. So I try and keep all the proprietary operating system stuff out of here. But, I haven't been through the process, so there's no guarantees. Yep. All right, good. So when we start out writing, we go hello, hello, whatever. But, why start from scratch when I've got my last one here? This is a boorish hyperbolic hyperbole, right? This is just me thinking if I were to, do the high pressure sell of the stuff I'm doing to the public to try and, do that stuff I really hate, which is like that marketing side of it. The time has come to talk about Pipulate. I've been working on it on and off for 10 years. It's a tool for SEO and SEM, but it's also now a tool for AI. It is AI friendly, free and open source software. When I say AI friendly, in addition to tapping into the power of AI, I also mean software that encourages you to be friendly towards AI in a just-in-case sort of way. And above all, I teach you to jockey data around with the least possible tech overhead. In other words, I'll teach you how to develop technical skills of economic value today, tomorrow, and probably 50 years into the future without AI and without even knowing how to code. I don't give everything away, but I'm alluding to the fact this is really about writing. This is about getting people into the habit of just writing every day. I've changed my motto to, this is a good motto. The trick of modern literacy, blogging and journaling. That would do. But another one is a magnum opus every day, because I have the capacity to write Hamilton cranking out the Federalist Papers, right? Maybe not with his level of genius, but that writing capacity just happens to be one of those things I either was born with or trained myself to do. And so whereas everyone else in the world is going to be getting the machines to write for them, whitewashing their content, trying to put all the artistry in the prompt to get different output from, struggling to make different input, I don't like that idea. I think that's garbage in, garbage out, just cleverly disguised. And it's better to encourage people to write with their own voice. Okay, so that's the last thing I'm going to say before I show you. I see that it's all typed. Yeah, it's all typed. Yeah, it's like I wrote all this. This is all typed here. This is my writing. You're interested in the stuff that gets automatically written. So yeah, another muscle memory you're working on. Yeah, this is a movement. I mean, in the most hyped up, marketing way, I'm going to tell people they're illiterate. They're just they lost touch with the reality. They've been left behind. If they can only read and write, forget math, but if you can only read and write, you've already gone illiterate. You know, the kind of feeling sorry for people who can't read signs around them. That's the new state. But it's Python. Python in particular. I know it's going to be fighting words for a lot of people, but this reality is settling in on the world. The latest studies coming out by what do you call it? Let's see. I think I grabbed their picture. Here's just Red Monk. The latest Red Monk studies have come out, and if you look at the upper right quadrant, you'll see that it's JavaScript, Python, and for some reason Java. But yeah. Anyway, I'll get off my high horse. Let's do some AI. Title: bombastic hyperbole I will be using to launch Pipulate. All right, so I wrote my title. I spell checked my title. That had nothing to do with AI. There's a delay between when what you type and when it shows up on my screen. That's okay. That's fine. Definitely type away. I'll catch up with everything you type. But I'm about to show you the magic piece, the AI integrated piece. It's a keyboard shortcut. I make sure I save it, of course. And then my keyboard shortcut is @P for publish. Now I stage the scene here. I show you the command I'm about to trigger. And I don't trigger it right away, just in case, I guess it's kind of like a debug mode, but I look at it and you can see all I'm doing here is I'm about to run a program through Python, a program called chop.py, and I'm feeding it with a -f parameter, a file that's somewhere on my drive, journal.md, this file, right? It picked up the file name, it picked up the full path automatically because of the macro. The macro expanded, it took the full file path of the file I'm editing when I hit the keyboard shortcut. We can always look at that in the init.vim. But I hit enter here. Oh, how I connect Copilot to NeoVim. Okay, I've already ran ahead in the other part of it. This is also OpenAI. Copilot is OpenAI via Microsoft. But this in a moment is OpenAI because here it's hitting OpenAI for the headline, it's hitting OpenAI for the description, and it's doing this through the OpenAI API, their codex, rather than Copilot. Copilot has nothing to do with this. But because AI is doing the writing for me, I don't publish right away, but I do show it on the screen. Here it is. These little things now where it's a summary of my content. And then you can see it's updating the YAML-esque file, so I'll show you it back there in a moment. But, discover how to leverage AI and automate to create unique, valuable content. Description, it wrote, join me to learn how to... It knew about this broadcast. How to automation and create SEO and SEM tools, develop technical skills, write for yourself, discover how to jockey data around, use blind spots in trained models, and train your own in-house models with proprietary data. Learn how to be the one that AIs have to train from to fill in those blind spots and become highly sought after. Not bad, right? So there's a few things in the picture. I'm using the OpenAI API here, and I'm doing that with a program that's always in my B2 buffer, right? That chop.py is this, and as I scroll down, you can see just some basic code here, parsing the arguments. But then I put the AI stuff at the top because I knew everyone was going to be interested in that. There's my main function for chopping the YAML. But now we go, OpenAI. This is a hit against the OpenAI API. And so all the code necessary for doing this, with the exception of the prompt, is here. It's not a lot of code, and that's with a big fat Figlet banner. This is all my code for OpenAI. That's it, right? Copy, paste, ready, use it for your own stuff, use it in my system as I have intended. It just doesn't matter. It could be even a lot easier than this, except I'm also saving it off to a database in the background just in case, you know. Why save your data in one place when you can save it in two? I also have things which, if it exceeds the size restrictions of, you asked me that, Miles, how large can it be? And it can be 4,097 tokens wide, including the prompt and the answer, which is actually quite a unique problem here because I have to keep my prompt small enough so that my answer doesn't fill it up to overflow. So that's the only complicated stuff in here. Otherwise, it's, you know, it's like using, you know, the request library, send a request, receive a response. The fact that there's AI there is like, you know, almost besides the point. It's just normal Python, you know, HTTP programming. Yep, so now let me go back to buffer 1, B1. In fact, my keyboard shortcut there is Control S. The same thing to update my color highlighting is what brings me back to buffer 1, in fact. And there it is. There it is. Last time you were looking at this file, it only had a date and a title. Now it has a date, title, headline, description, and keywords. And let's see if function F5 works for me now. Now, something about screencasting is interfering with that. Set wrap. Ugh, makes that look ugly. But down here you can see, you know, that was filled in. That was filled in underneath of me. The AI, you know, the way files update automatically with NeoVim. NeoVim senses an updated file. It, you know, once I updated it on the drive, it updated it here. And I keep copies. It's like, why keep it in two places, in one place when you can have it in two? I have it in three, and, you know, eating its tail, so I can always go back if this process messed up. But, you know, for the most part, I'm just updating the file underneath of me. And when I come back, it's just now has more fields, right? This is the tables. Table stakes is the expression. There's a certain amount of using AI in my field of SEO that you just can't not know about. If you're not using, well, most people are copy and pasting into ChatGPT or Bing or Bard or whatever to do this equivalent process. But why, if a keyboard shortcut in your editor can just do it in the background? And, you know, so you can do little automations that have AI to them because it's just standard IO. Anything you do, anytime you hit an external program, there's tons of places with, it doesn't matter if it's NeoVim or VS Code, all these tricks could work in VS Code just as well. I just happen to think NeoVim is the right way to go for timelessness reasons. You know, if you're hitting some other program on the outside and it's doing things and pulling in data, same thing. That's just the way you do AI these days. Not Copilot, because Copilot has all this context, and I'll do that now because I know that's what you're waiting for me to get to. I honestly don't know. I only did it once and it stuck. It's stuck in a way that's surviving between my Linux reinstalls. So I assume that this is something that's going into my .config, which I keep Linux side. Which I keep Windows side. So, you know, there's a .config directory under Linux, which with a little trick, with a symbolic link, you can actually keep it Windows side. I know you're on a Mac, and some of these tricks will probably work on a Mac, but to make configuration stuff survive between reinstalls of WSL, I keep it Windows side. My repos, my config files. So it's surviving, and I only had to do it once miraculously. I keep being surprised. I'm like, oh, NeoVim is still there. So let's go take a look together on the web. Install You know what? Yeah, right. It's doing, you saw the browser wars right in action there. I opened a new tab and started to type, and it put my cursor down here instead of up here. That's browser wars. Install NeoVim, install Copilot for NeoVim. And if you haven't seen Bing yet, the new Bing, oh, it's very much worth it. If you don't keep yourself see, Mac people have a problem there. Edge isn't popular on the Mac, but it does work. If you download Edge on the Mac and have a Microsoft login, you can do this. Look at that. Look at how the citations there. Look at the links it's giving out. How this isn't Google is beyond me. Now, it's social responsibility. Google didn't want to let an AI out onto the web and teach it to program. Microsoft did. And now Google is cornered into an immoral response to Microsoft's immoral action. But that's business, right? What are you going to do? Tell your shareholders, sorry, we don't want to let an AI loose on the internet and teach it how to program. We don't think that's a good idea. Sorry, you have to, because Microsoft has no qualms about it. So follow the instructions provided on the official documentation. That sounds like a good idea. NeoVim. Yeah, it's coming back to me now. NeoVim on Linux and Mac and OS. I typed this. I copy and pasted that into a command line. And then I went back here after I ran it, and yeah, you've been doing that with Bing and Chrome. Good. Oh, Bing is working on Chrome? That's new. I will check that out. Anyway, once I ran that little script, I came over here and I typed Copilot enable. And that was it. That was the whole install. I ran that one little script and I typed Copilot enable. Of course, that was after having gone to the GitHub site and signed up for Copilot. I don't think I need to show you that, but you know, you get your month of free Copilot. Is it a month? It feels like so much longer than that because they just sent me the text that they're going to start charging me for it. Oh, Bard. Oh, instead of Bing. Yeah. So, Miles, there's a lot of people out there who are not getting the Bing experience because they're on Chrome and they don't want to give it up. It's a mistake. Bing is profoundly beyond Bard for all kinds of reasons. If you want to know, by the way, here, I'll flex my muscle a little bit. Who is this guy talking to me? What does he know? I am like in the biz for longer than the biz had a name, that is SEO. But if you go to the #1 company in the industry, Moz.com, and you go to their blog, I don't need to tell you about it because you can just go here to the timeline of Bing and Bard features, this wonderful article that will, you know, tell you all the things that I'm tempted to tell you on this video call. But Bing is blowing Bard out of the water. I'm from Philadelphia, so it's water. All right. Yeah, good. I'm glad you have an open, because you know I have an open mind too. These are opinions. These are not hard and fast, conclusions. I watch this like sports. This is my sports. And the second, I can even show you what Bard does better. I won't show you, but if you do ask Bard how to code, it will offer in the lower right, send this to Colab, and you can just have your Python code magically go over to Colab and run it in the cloud and like one click away. That's pretty awesome. Microsoft could do the same thing because they've got a cloud-based notebook service as well. They just call it Notebook, Azure Notebook. But in Bing, you can run your code in the cloud to test it, which is cool. The one thing it's got going for it. Is Bing accessible via NeoVim? Oh, big picture stuff again. I should really get my stylus and be ready to draw things. So, models, when you hear people say models, and it's like and let me start a new blog post because this is a wonderful topic. A model like GPT-3 or 4 are personalities. They are trained models. Yeah, I'd like to draw it, but I'll just talk it through. They're trained models, and a trained model is a big thing. When they say it crawled the internet, it learned from it, whatever, that's like a single instance. It's like if you're talking VMs and stuff, it's a single VM instance that had a lot invested into it. So even though there's like GPT-4, GPT 4.5, when you've got the model, it is an intelligent, it is like an intelligent being that has been trained with its experiences. It's like its scope holds those experiences. Bing is a GPT, I believe, 4.5 model. So it is GPT 4.5 trained by Microsoft. Copilot is owned by Microsoft. It may be the same entity behind there. It is uncertain. It is unknown. So if I had that plugin running, I would draw circles and boxes. But, Microsoft has a GPT 4.5 model. They've had prior ones. Or no, when they announced it, it was 4.5 when they announced it. Which runs Bing? That is known. That's been announced. That was in an announcement. It's just, how Bing is working. It has its opinion there. It's not public yet, but it's probably it is public, and is so. This is strong indication. These little auto suggests you're saying here, that might be old knowledge, indicating that it's on the model that is ChatGPT. So I don't think all the training that Microsoft does to their model on Bing is sent back to the other models. They don't equalize their brains. They don't, that's, I guess, the right term. So I don't think this is as smart as Bing. I think Bing is the smartest one out there. It's back-ended by, the entity known as GPT 4.5. And let's see. I don't know what runs Copilot, but it is a GPT trained model. Maybe the same being-like thing. Being behind Bing, but there's some indication it's not. It's not. That it's a less broadly trained. They want to say advanced. Advanced might be a good word for it. Let me turn off wrap because I hate seeing the bunny wrap. Set no wrap. Now with no wrap, I can go bigger. A less experienced model, maybe less broad, less general. Because the one on Bing is being trained on everything everyone is asking Bing. That's like subject matter wise, like if you were talking about it in terms of subject matter, Bing is broadly trained. And then Copilot I might be the only one on this earth who's using Copilot in a journaling sense. I might be the only one on the planet with Copilot with me while I journal. The activity I'm doing is called journaling or blogging. It's a form of writing that is not meant to be read by others, but rather to be written by you, for you, and only you. And then it gets repetitive. If you see it start to repeat, oh, well, it's done every day. Yeah. And is meant to be done in a way that is not self-critical, right? So interesting point, I turn off Copilot on TXT files. It just doesn't come alive on TXT files. And my actual personal journal is a .txt file. I'm not even thrilled to be storing it on GitHub, much less, sharing it with an AI. So over time, one of my projects is to take my personal journal off of GitHub. I mean, it's a private repo. No one has access to it. But these days, you just don't know. So I'm going to put it in GitLab on a home cloud NAS server. I already run it. It's something I use all the time. And, it can host repos, and you can use it just like you use GitHub. So you can have those repos that you keep AI's eyes and, Microsoft snooping nose out of. And then you can have repos that you keep on GitHub and you also give Copilot access to, These are issues I'm dealing with like all the time now that I think are going to be mainstream and not too long, because we're in the honeymoon phase, right? We're in the honeymoon phase of all this. Of AI-assisted, AI-generated content. See, it wants to say AI-generated content, and this is a perfect example of how all this stuff is statistically whitewashed. That's not my opinion. I think people now, this is an SEO industry, or, my opinion as a person in the SEO industry, search engine optimization. There's going to be dramatically different opinions. Mine is not it. Mine is not the mainstream opinion. I'm a anti-pattern kind of person. And I think everyone who's cheating is setting themselves up for a fall. Not because Google is going to be able to recognize it and penalize it, but because of that. Because I don't want to write statistically average crap. That's kind of insulting to me. So, we're in the honeymoon phase of, AI-assisted writing or assisted coding. It's not even writing, it's assisted coding, because Microsoft, because, GitHub, it's Microsoft, because Microsoft offers Copilot for GitHub, offers GitHub Copilot. Which works in VS Code, which after the free trial is, I believe it's $100 a year. It's a great deal, but it's part of the Microsoft tax now. Now you got to pay your $100 per year for your GitHub with your private repos, unlimited private repos. And you got to pay $100 a year for Microsoft 365, which now has the AI in it too. It's another good deal, but now you're at $200. Now, if you want Copilot, that's another $100 a year. Microsoft has you up to $300 a year, right? This is in like the Adobe Creative Suite neighborhood, right? And so, if you're a professional, this is no problem, but it's going to stratify society. I can't be, creating a literacy campaign that relies you to pay a $300 Microsoft tax every year. I'm going to be advocating NeoVim and whatever AIs are free that you can plug into, because it's not going to be a Copilot only game for very long. Amazon already announced Code Whisperer, which is free. And Google announced its own version, which I haven't researched yet, but it's been announced. So there's the Three Stooges out there competing to write your code for you. I think it's comical. I'm not putting it down. I'm going to be using it. Big Three Stooges fan here. But it's going to atrophy people's brains all over the world. It's like using a calculator for math. It's okay to do. I do it. However, if you're in a field where advantage in math is economic advantage, then everyone around you who knows the fundamentals is always going to have an advantage over you. Cheaters don't prosper. Cheaters prosper until until it's ruined for everyone, until everyone catches on to the cheating trick. Because if they're cheating, it means it's easy. If it's easy, it means everyone can do it. If everyone can do it, it means it's going to be ruined for everyone in some period of time, some unknown period of time. So automated content creation is one of those areas. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't do it. It's to say that you should be a guiding hand on the process so that you're not creating the same schlock as everyone else. That's all. Okay, so, I showed you now the how to get it, which is just running this little script once you have NeoVim installed. And once that script is running, you enable it. So this does something in the background. Let's look at that. It clones something. And after it's cloned, oh, there it is. I knew it. It puts it in the .config. It just drops something in location in your .config. So NeoVim really must know something about things that are put in this location. /GitHub/start. That's really interesting. So NeoVim already has ahead of the time a /GitHub location in its config file directory structure where it will automatically start things out of. That's your plugin answer. It has a built-in, quasi plugin system, which, it's running something with a .vim extension here. Let's go look at that. It'll probably show you my code, my API key. I hope not. You know what? I am going to I'll stage myself to do it. See, that puts it in the last buffer in Vim. I just put it all the way over there to the right. Now I can enlarge to some unreasonably large size where even if it has my API key in there, it's not going to be the entire thing. And then I'll do BLAST, which takes me to my last buffer. Yeah, there it is. So whatever this is, I'll gradually enlarge it or reduce it and make sure I'm not giving away my API key in here. Yeah, so that little script just drops this in place, whatever it does. Prepares it. Oh, yeah, you lost me there for a second. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm showing, what NeoVim, what that little script that you get off of the GitHub Copilot page that you have to do after you've, activated your Copilot trial. You run this script, it puts this in location, and what I was pointing out is that it's in a .config location. That's why it's surviving my Linux side, reinstalls, because for me, I use a symbolic link to keep this Windows side so that I don't lose config files during those reboots. So if you're using a system like what I use, I'm not sure what you're going to do on the Mac, Miles, but if you're using a virtual machine or a container like multi-boot, we talked about that. Multi-boot's a great way to do this. It's going to be, I believe, exactly the same on the Mac as it is on Windows, because Ubuntu wants you running Ubuntu even on a Mac, and they want it to be easy, so they made multi-boot so it's as easy to get Ubuntu on a Mac as it is to get it under WSL on a Windows machine. So I think this entire trick is going to work there, but I don't know about these symbolic links. But I don't see why not. It's oh, I see why not, because Microsoft did something special to map the /mount locations in. I've got some discoveries to make. I'm not quite sure whether a Copilot activation under a virtual machine will survive recreation of that virtual machines. But if it's in there and you don't destroy and rebuild the virtual machine, it should last. But that's different than the stuff I'm doing. I'm making nothing matter. Hardware doesn't matter. Particular instances of virtual machines or containers don't matter. Everything gets rebuilt from scratch. You preserve your config files. You preserve your repos. You just pour it all in together like ingredients in a recipe, and you get your machine back. So I think that's vastly superior. I don't like Docker. Docker has a bunch of problems with it that make it not the right choice for sort of the new person, Mac side or Windows side. This server build script approach, vastly superior for a number of reasons, except I am relying on a few things that WSL does, like symbolic links between Windows and the Linux side, that are both very cool and might be special Microsoft. So I need to make that little discovery. Yeah, so dark horse players. I'm just going to talk sort of open-ended now. I'm going to go back. I'm going to BD to get rid of that. I'll go back to a reasonable size, and I'll just talk, on whatever now. Definitely type to me if you have questions. And if you like this process, we don't have to do chat. Next time we could plan ahead, and I can do one of the video conference things. Microsoft, which is not Teams. Teams is the one I won't do, but I'll do Google's video conferencing, that other popular one, Zoom, I have. So happy to do any of those. I'll even look into Teams. I just don't do it because I was staying away from that in the early days of Teams. I didn't like the way they were pushing that on us. Yeah, I was excited about a little point here. Yeah. So the dark horse players, Ubuntu is playing an enormous part. There's a lot of alternatives. Let's preface this by saying it's not the only way to do it. It may not even necessarily be the best way to do it, but it's going to work for most people most of the time. It's the 80-20 rule. The 20% of the work is going to satisfy 80% of the use cases is just use Ubuntu. It's the default under WSL on Windows, and the Ubuntu organization is working very hard to make sure that Mac people don't have WSL envy, right? Because WSL is changing the world. Have no mistake about it. The world is changing because Linux is easily accessible to Windows people. I know you're on a Mac and it's 10% of the market or whatever, but that other 90% is using Windows. And so the world changes when Microsoft does these small little tweaks that changes it for everybody. And they were only doing this on Windows 11. However, a couple of, last September, I think it was, they took all these special Windows 11 only features and they said, oh, it's now available for Windows 10. So all of a sudden, invisible floodgates in the world being opened, every developer had Linux. Now, there's a little bit out of whack about that statement. The elites are still on Macs. And they're on Unix, so they don't feel, they feel like they're already on a Nix operating system, you see. They don't feel like they need to be running Linux. It's already Unix. We have the real thing. It plays right into the elite mentality. However, the real activity is happening in libraries that are being distributed under, the Debian repository, which is a Ubuntu, and and the Red Hat repository, which is Yum, and every other major version that's out there. And the whole machine learning, data science community, they will, the first thing out of their mouth is just use Linux. Now, it's an impossible situation to resolve most of the time, but Microsoft being Microsoft, they sprinkled their magic fairy dust. It wasn't fast. It's been 10 years in the making. But now they've got a stable Linux on, all modern versions of Windows. Apple has not done that. Apple has no interest in anything with a free and open source repository being on their machines. Even Homebrew is not official Apple. It's called Homebrew. That's a problem. So multi-boot, and high horse. I love the Mac platform. Their hardware quality builds is wonderful. And, what they do with Unix to build a proprietary system on top of it is also wonderful. It's a lot of great things, but what it's not is connected to the movement. So, if you haven't watched my little walking video, Miles, where I walk from Times Square down to the ferry, watch it, because I really get into the virtual machine as a normal, see, even now, even after all this time, I don't have elegant words for it. You need to normalize your code. You need to get rid of your weird paths on the Mac. You got to get rid of your backslashes on Windows. I've taken it to an extreme. You got to get rid of every user account under home, but / Ubuntu. I mean, I've gone a little bit extreme, but with this approach I'm taking, it's not a problem. It'd be a problem if it was your main work machine and it was accessible on a network and all that, but it's not. It's contained in this little world on your laptop. Yeah, the rabbit hole video. Yeah, that's a very important one. All the most important concepts that led up to the evolution of this kind of work is in there. And, Noah's Ark of code, a nomadic coding system. And it's more than just a Noah's Ark of code and a nomadic, because there's a lot of advocates of Docker and container out there, who will just wash away these important details, these nuances, these subtleties. But the subtleties and the nuances and the details are everything. Preserve your important ingredients. Take all parts that are large and bulky and updated frequently, and just pull them down with an install script over again. And then take your special ingredients, which is the only things you need to preserve. I've got a repos directory, because you don't want to have to git clone all your repos over and over again. So I take the repos directory, I put that host operating system side. I take a .config directory, I put that host operating system side. Now, not only is this, able to survive container reinstalls, I tend to say virtual machines, but these are containers under a hypervisor. The Windows people call it a hypervisor. I'll be learning what it is on the Mac, but they all got them. It's hardware controlled resource management down at a lower level, usually than the operating system, although there is another phantom operating system there managing it called the hypervisor. It's an operating system in itself. And there's free and open source versions of this. There's stuff out there that's Linux all the way through. The virtual stack or something like that. It's spun a bunch of different ways, but hardware supports it. It's officially supported by Intel hardware, AMD hardware. I'm sure the Apple, M1 and M2 chips have their own way of doing it, but it's control of what we call virtual machines, but there's not really a whole lot of what that implies going on. It's memory management, it's resource isolation, and sometimes dynamic resource reallocation. And it destabilizes your system a little bit. I'm going to be honest. It's not, what you always want happening on your machine. So it's turned off by default on a lot of machines. Most of the times, I think every fresh install has it turned off, which is why I tell people when you go over here, you've been looking at the same thing long enough. But when you run my install.bat, I say it's best to install Ubuntu 20.04 from the Windows Store first, then run this script. Because I don't want responsibilities for all that hypervisor stuff. I'm not like software supporting this stuff. I'm just showing you how to run my script and build something out of what micros. You know, if Craig is here, I don't even know who's with me. I should go look. But I am staying very close to the road more traveled. I am trying not to forge or innovate any new ground except for a very robust install script that all it's installing is it's a post installation to Microsoft's Windows Store WSL install. I guess that puts it in a nutshell. You know, I don't want to be, I see you're still there, Miles. There's other people who might be lurking. Microsoft themselves is half interested. I mean, I see their program manager for WSL peek at my work and then sort of shy away because, you know, I'm prickly, and you know, if they say they're doing something that they're not, I'm calling them out on it, and they don't want to be in these wars, I'm sure. But you know, I'm on their side. I have a love-hate relationship with Microsoft. I know they're in it to make money. It's for their shareholders. How could it be otherwise? They're not at fault in anything. But they're trying to kill Google, you know. They are trying to keep you from having live Linux servers running in the background, because once you have live Linux servers in the background while Windows is running, it's another floodgate thing. You know, they've opened enough floodgates and they're playing this kind of threshold game. They're playing brinksmanship. How much Linux can we give them without them understanding they don't need Windows? And in the meantime, there's this race going on because the architecture since NT has been just brilliant. Linux truly is a subsystem of Windows, as is every other operating system that the hardware architecture will support, because they put all that memory management stuff that's supported at that low level in the hardware up at a higher level that is still not the operating system. Windows is not running top level. Consequently, Microsoft, and not Apple. Apple took a different route. Microsoft has the ultimate shell game in what is actually powering what you look at. They can punch out rectangular regions and make one thing completely hit a different computer as far as all the software is concerned than another region. Now you can say this can be done under any system, under a Mac, but Microsoft has been doing it well since NT. I don't know how many years back that is, and given Microsoft's resources and, you know, frankly, brilliance in the whole approach, they're doing it great. So if you get a really cheap Windows piece of hardware and you use it to run WSL under Windows, it's legit. And it's so legit, in fact, that Microsoft, I feel, has to be very careful about tipping their hand about what Linux really is, the greater significance of Linux. They named it Windows Subsystem for Linux. The mind control games are starting right at how they name it, because, you know, get off my horse again. But, you know, we take advantage of these gifts from Microsoft without becoming beholden to them. And to that end, you know, I do practice. You know, I can't let my muscle memory become unwittingly hardwired to the Microsoft way of doing things. So you hop around from hardware to hardware, and I'm very fortunate and privileged and grateful that I'm in the position to do that. My employer gave me a Mac that I would have never bought with my own money these days. And I've got Windows machines from past life, so I get to do this. Eventually, I'll configure something with Linux on the desktop, but it doesn't even really matter because it's just always going to work with a system that's Linux on the desktop. Yeah. Yep, you're welcome. No worries. I'm just rambling now. So if anyone else has questions, yeah, no, I'm done. This is it. I'm just going to give other people an opportunity to talk. I'll see if anyone else is even there. I haven't even looked. Yoo-hoo, our dear people. Oh, I'm looking in the wrong spot. So good night, Miles. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your question. And glad to have had you here and glad to have answered your questions. Yeah, so I'll stay on. There's still looks like 3 people. There's some lurkers. If you enjoyed this, do a comment on the video once it's up there as a regular video. And this is kind of a preview of my work, where it's going. I haven't showed it to anyone yet. I'll do more formal introductions, and I'll wrap it in some marketing speak so that it doesn't sound as kind of abstract and out there. Still 3 concurrent viewers. You got to say something or I'll disconnect. I'll give you like 2 minutes. You're welcome, Miles. Good night. I know there's a time delay, so. Yeah, okay. Video conferencing would be great. I'll look into to video conferencing. Yep, no comments from people. I'm not going to make dead air. 30 seconds you have. And I don't even know if this is telling me the truth. Okay, I guess that's about it. Good night, everyone. Talk to you soon.